Let's go.
Welcome to the Trusted Leader Show. I'm your host, David Horsager. Join me as I sit down with influential leaders from around the world to discuss why leaders and organizations fail, top tactics for high performance, and how you can become an even more trusted leader.
Welcome to the Trusted Leader Show. I'm Kent Svensson, producer of the Trusted Leader Show. And for today's episode, we thought we would revisit a previous episode where David interviewed tech investor, author, speaker, and entrepreneur Susan Sly. In the episode, Susan talks about why our habits will shape who we are, so we need to pay attention to make sure that our habits are shaping us to be the people that we want to become. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
You know, you talked about habits there. We might go backwards to some decisions, but what are habits? You know, in Trusted Leader, we talk about habits all the time. Little things done consistently make the biggest difference. But what are some habits? What routines do you have that help you be the trusted, successful leader you are today?
Well, David, like you, I always went a different way than I am now. And so one of the biggest ways we can shift our habits, I know you talk about this, is modeling success. And I remember you and I having a conversation many years ago, and you were talking about how you lost weight, and you went and instead of getting counsel by people who weren't the weight you wanted to be, you went and asked a bunch of people what they did, and you modeled their habits and shifted your body. So I was the heaviest kid in my grade in a small town. And so I was teased, I was bullied, I was chased home. I was, if you can't see me, so I'm very olive skinned, I'm mixed race. So I was teased for the color of my skin. I was, bullied for my weight and so on. And so one day I made a decision. I was watching the Olympics and I saw the runners, right? And I said, okay, if runners look like that and I want to look like that, I have to learn to run. So I was 11 years old. I got up at 5 a.m. and I went out the door to run, and it was awful. I went 100 yards and I'm like gasping for breath. But the next day I did it again and I went 150 yards and then I went 200 yards. And the reason I share this is because that is how I've developed all the habits in my life. So I wake up very early in the morning. It's a habit that I am in. I detox my body. It's a habit I have. I, drink close to a gallon of water a day. It's the habit that I'm in. And if everyone thinks about this, that if we really, it doesn't take 21 days to build a habit. I've seen smokers who've tried to quit and they've gone without cigarettes for 6 months, then they are triggered, or someone who's an alcoholic or whatever. It takes, if you're taking notes, a habit takes as long as it takes. I've seen people, I know you have too, David, who they have a traumatic life event and they never pick up a drink again, or they never pick up a cigarette again, or whatever the case is. And then we see people who have a traumatic life event and they keep on doing the same stuff that got them to the cancer or got them to the bankruptcy or the divorce or whatever it is. So the habits that I have must also align with the woman that I want to be. And so I set the bar very high for myself. Even my employees, I always say to them, I don't expect you to keep up with me, but I expect you to be 85 to 90% as good as I am, because I will out-habit anyone. If I want to learn something, I will out-habit someone who has way more experience than I do, because that's what life is about. In my opinion, we keep learning and learning and learning until it's our last breath and we go, man, that was a rush.
So let's get into this even a little bit further, as long as we're here.
Sure.
Well, first of all, routine, any other routines, can be interesting to people. Like you get up at whatever time, and then what is the first thing? What kind of regular routines does Susan Sly do?
Sure. Yeah. So Jim Rohn, who, amazing business philosopher, he was Tony Robbins' mentor. I had the privilege of sharing the stage with him live the last time he spoke live in Dallas, Texas. That was many years ago. So I'm aging myself. I'm almost 50 if you can see me. But anyway, so Jim used to say, never end your day, never start your day before you end your day. Never start your month before you end your month. Never start your year before you end your year. And I said, you know what? Hey, again, success leaves clues. Develop the habit. So I got in the habit of writing out my day in advance. So I use a online calendar. I use a paper planner, and I literally will write out my day in advance. And if there's something that's not in alignment with my goals, it goes.
So when do you do that? When do you do it, by the way?
At night.
The night before.
Yep. It's the last thing I do when I close down my office. It's the very last thing. I also make sure I write at least 10 items of gratitude every single day, because to him or her who is given, much is given. And essentially what that means is the more we appreciate what we have, even the small things. And I think if COVID taught us anything, it's to do that, right? And so that's the first thing I do. Then I wake up somewhere between 4 and 5 in the morning, depends on the day. I pray, I meditate. I heard the best thing last year, which is if you want something in your own life, pray that thing for someone else. So if you want prosperity, you pray it over someone else. If you want better health. And so it's got, my list is so long, David, that it's actually like an hour. And then I go in my office, and that's when I do my creative work. I clear out any overnight emails, Slack messages, like all of you. I'm in 3 Slack channels and counting, text messages, all of that stuff. Then I get a workout in. I move my body at least 90 minutes every day. Sometimes it's Peloton, hot yoga, running, whatever it is, getting kids ready for school. We have 5 kids. 4 of them are at home right now. Yay. We were talking about that. And then, it's getting suit up, ready for my day. My assistant does not book any meetings before 10 in the morning. I just won't do it unless it's, there's something that I must do. I'm a CEO of a company, so sometimes that happens. We work in different countries and time zones. And then I don't let her book meetings after 3. That is my choice. If I want to do a meeting between 3 and 5, that's my time to close things down, get my creative work done, and so on. So that's how I run my day.
I love it. That's amazing. So let's go back to habits one step. How do you build a new one? Like if you're starting with a new habit, like feeling, well, I'm going to do this. I'm going to start running every day. But then they get to tomorrow and it doesn't become a habit. As you know, most people wouldn't do what you did. They gasped after 100 yards and they went back to bed the next day. So breaking through and building a new habit, any tips?
Sure. That's an amazing question. It really starts with desire. And here are my tips for really locking down that desire. It's number 1 is ask yourself the question, precisely what is the habit? Define it clearly. I want to run for 30 minutes a day, not I want to start running. I'll chase you down the street, you'll start running, but it might not become a habit. Like, be very clear. Number 2 is, what is the benefit to you of developing this habit? And list as many as you can. And then number 3 is, what is the detriment if you don't develop the habit? And then number 4 is, who in your life is suffering because you don't have this habit? And then the 5th thing is, what will this habit mean to you 5 or 10 years down the road? Because it's the compound effect, like Darren Hardy talks about. So I'll give you an example. So if viewers can see me, I've got in my hand, it's a glass, made in the USA glass bottle. It's empty of gloopy green stuff. So last year I decided, David, I'm like, you know what? I need to have more fresh fruits and vegetables. The Framingham study is the longest study done on cardiovascular health, but as an ancillary finding, they found that if you consume 5 to 7 servings of fresh fruits and vegetables a day, it reduces your risk of cancer, all kinds, by 70%. So I was going through my day, having protein shakes and, raw almonds and all that good stuff. But I realized, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm not getting enough fresh fruits and vegetables. So I decided what I was going to do on Sunday is I was going to take, greens. I was going to take organic celery, lemon juice in the Vitamix. I was going to mix this all up and I was going to fill 5 jars, 1 for every day of the week. And I was going to grab them. And that's what I did. Now, it was really inconvenient because I had to dedicate that time on Sunday to making this gloopy green drink. And then the second thing was I had to figure out a way to make this a habit that it was so convenient that I had no excuse, like even running out of my house to my office, I could just grab it out of the fridge and I could go. So that was a habit I developed last year. And now it's so ingrained in me because I'm going, the benefit is, I reduce my risk of cancer. And then the detriment is, if I don't do this, I'm not getting enough fresh fruits and vegetables. Maybe I could get cancer, right? And you think about all the people in my life that benefit. That's just an example.
I love it. Great 5-step process.
Most training and development initiatives don't last or even solve the root problem hindering an organization. That's where TrustEdge certification comes in. TrustEdge certified partners are equipped with a suite of tools to identify, benchmark, and close gaps in trust for good. Because when you solve the real issue, you get measurable results and a culture where people actually want to make an impact. So whether you're a trainer, a manager, an HR executive, or a leader in learning and development, check out trustedgeplatform.com and see how you can start solving the root issue and get lasting results in your organization. And now back to the show.
I've got Kent smiling at me. And by the way, Kent in studio here, give a little wave, and maybe you have a habit, maybe you have a question. But before that, Kent is a healthy eater. He has a system of how he eats. I, as you know, was transformed. And so every morning, they joke about me right here that I have a bag of celery. I generally eat a bag of celery every morning by noon. It's just a habit. I have the bag of celery. That means if I do that, I won't do other things. You talk about some of the books, I don't know if it was Atomic Habit or the other one I read, but basically these keystone habits, right, that make other things go. If I do that, then I don't do all these other things. If I don't do that, so hungry, whatever, then I won't do other things. So that's fun that's a great process for it. Or the new thing, because we've got a couple new staff this week that hadn't seen me just eat a green pepper just like an apple, which is very common for me these days. But I love it. I think I would enjoy drinking what you have there a little more than just eating raw celery. Some people can't handle that, but it's an easy way for me. One thing I think about habits with what you said is, you've got to do what you will do, right? So it's not what someone else would. When people said to me, well, you just eat less, exercise more. Well, I'm not going to start running marathons like my wife or like you, but I found a way to do exercise that I will do, right? I'm not going to never eat ice cream again, but I can do this. Like, I'm not going to do all of this, but that one thing that, I'm going to, so it's kind of like, creating what you will do. You'll go run 100 yards or whatever it is at first, and now you run for days, I think. So go ahead. All right, I'm gonna shoot it to Kent. Kent, what's a question for Susan Sly?
So I was wondering, since you were talking about how to really build good habits, do you have any insight on maybe someone has a habit they're trying to get rid of, they're trying to stop? What are some points, some things that they can do in order to be able to get past that and be able to start building actually better, healthier habits?
Kent, that's a great question. And the reason I was eating a lot of celery, Dave, but it's a teeth thing. And I was like, I have to, Kent, to your point, the more, in the business world, we talk about reducing friction in any sort of SOP, standard operating procedure. So I look at my life like an experiment. So I'm like, how much friction can I reduce? So if I put the celery in the water in the Vitamix, then I don't have to deal with the teeth thing, and I can just drink this thing. And guess what? My digestive system loves it because it's already, emulsified, right? So I know this is going to be the episode. Everyone's like, that's the celery episode.
That's all right. We could have gone so many different directions. I have so many questions. We could take 5 episodes, but let's go with this for now, and we'll get to some business soon.
Sure. So what if we're in the habit, Kent's question is that, and we know the habit's not healthy. So sometimes what happens, just taking a step back, is we've developed a habit and it served us in a way that no longer serves us because we've grown. Right. And so we've gotten into a habit that we knew was toxic from the outset, but we told ourselves that we could control it. And this is where alcoholism comes from, and drug addiction or porn addiction or Netflix addiction, or even coming out of this political cycle, there were a lot of people that became addicted to fear. But here's the interesting thing in the brain. The same part of our brain that becomes addicted to something negative is also the same part that becomes addicted to something positive. So I'm going to go down a little rabbit hole for everyone. I'll do it quickly. So there are 4 key hormones that are the hormones of fulfillment, and they're the dose hormones: dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphins. Dopamine is that positive reinforcement. So if we go on Instagram and we like something, that gives us a little dopamine hit. So the same dopamine hit comes from checking something off our list. And oxytocin is that hormone of connection. Serotonin is that beautiful, feel good kind of, just joy that we get. And endorphins come from a challenge or a thrill, right? So if we understand how, and I've done so many talks on this, if we understand how these hormones reinforce our behavior, we can create any habit and we can get rid of any habit. And so how that happens is this. Firstly, we have to give ourselves an easy, low friction way to check something off a box. And so that's why social media is so addicting, because it's like, right? And dopamine is when I like what Dave has, and serotonin is when Dave likes what I have. Right? So that's how we get that. So what we do is we start our habit like this. We might write out a list and it says, I easily run 10 minutes one day. I easily run 10 minutes 2 days. I easily run 10 minutes 3 days. And so what we do is we begin to check off these easy goals, and it gives us the dopamine hit. There was a study done in Texas and on saving money. And the people who set small micro goals, they actually end up saving more money than the people who set the big savings goals. So the people who said, I am easily saving $100 a month, they saved on average close to $5,000. Whereas the people who said, I'm going to save $5,000, they saved less than $2,500. So we can build the new habit using dopamine, oxytocin, the hormone of connection. So we want to surround ourselves, and David is world-class at this, with other people with the same habit. If you had 9 friends who were marathon runners and you were the only non-marathon runner, I bet you'd end up doing a marathon. Right. And so getting in a Facebook group, that's why Peloton is so addictive, because they've got the group, they've got the dopamine, they understand the psychology and these hormones. The next thing, the serotonin, is other people reinforcing you for that habit. So who are your cheerleaders? Who are, again, in those groups, like who are the people who are cheering you on when you accomplish the goals? And then endorphins come from those challenges. And so maybe building up to doing a 5K or building up to whatever that is. So that's how I suggest we develop habits. It's that reinforcement. That's how it's served me and the thousands of people that I've spoken to on stages and things in terms of developing new habits.
Well, that's awesome. Powerful stuff. And I think, I want to jump into something else, but, all of this talk really gets to that we believe organizations don't change. Only individuals do. But when an individual does, then a team, an organization, even a country can. I remember when we were working on corruption issues in East Africa, and we still definitely, I'm not flying over so much this last year with COVID, but we have to change a police officer. We have to then change we need to have systemic change, but we need to change somebody who will go away from 100 years old, way of thinking, right? So it's the same with health or anything else. We don't change a company so much until we change a person, a viewpoint, and give them tools and resources, inspiration to move forward. So I love that. So many things I want to touch base on. Can you, while we're still on this, can you give the quick kind of story of, you had all these diagnoses, you should be dead, doctors said, and yet you don't have MS now? Just the quick, what happened?
Sure. I had Dave Asprey on my show, and I think he articulated something that I was really seeking for many years, is how do I answer that question? I became my own experiment. So when Montel Williams was diagnosed with MS, he became a huge advocate of the ketogenic diet. And I'm like, well, it's working for Montel. I'll give it a try. Detoxing. A lot of people in the MS world were getting better, and they had some kind of regular detoxification plan, ozone therapy. There were so many things that I was like, hey, if it's working, I'm going to try it. And so from there, I came to my own formula of what works for me. And during that process of getting well, I ended up getting diagnosed with Lyme disease. I was on a trip in Africa. I got an amoeba. It started shutting down my organs. So in 2016, David, I almost died. And 2 doctors told me that if it wasn't for the nutrition regime I have, I would have been dead. And so I really felt like that was an opportunity for me because it took 2 years to come out of that. And then I was like, I get the opportunity to go into the next iteration of Susan, which was such a blessing, right? And so, yeah, my regime has shifted over the years. There's still a lot of things I do. I do IV therapy. As I said, I do ozone therapy. Usually once a year I go and I just go on like literal juice fasting retreat. Self-care is a big thing for me, and you have to make time. There are a lot of people, men and women, executives who say, I'll do it when we bring in this deal. I as a startup founder on the list of 2 companies for M&A, I'm not saying that stuff. That's all an excuse. You have to take care of yourself now because cancer will come knocking when cancer comes knocking. And I've seen so many people get derailed because they didn't take care of themselves. And the last thing I want to say about this is you don't just wake up one day and decide to get healthy and make change in that day. And the same thing is true. You just don't wake up one day unhealthy. All of those Doritos and the aspartame you had and the diet sodas and all the little things that eventually became a domino effect. And then you woke up one day and you were not well. And the other thing is most people don't know how bad they feel until they start feeling good.
That is true. Well, let's take a leap here because what I love about this and I love about you, Susan, is you seek to be healthy in life and it makes you a better CEO. And you've built some incredible companies that have had global impact. You're CEO of a company right now. You have a huge following, and you got these couple M&As coming up. So let's actually jump to your newest Radius AI. I mean, this is a new. I know you just came out of a new MIT program. I mean, you're a continual learner. I mean, just because you needed to have that expertise at this age for this new type of company. So tell us about that and what you're learning these days.
Sure, absolutely. The question I would ask everyone to really sit with, whether you're listening on the treadmill or you're, in your car on an airplane or wherever you are, what is the gap in your life? And what is that thing that if your career was only known for what you had previously done and could be known for no more, that you would feel is missing? Because I'm going to tell everyone right now, and it's not that I'm talking at you, I'm talking with you as a peer. We all have that thing, whether it's writing a book or stepping into the C-suite or going from the C-suite to creating a legacy program to mentor kids or whatever it is for you. There's always that one thing for us. So as I was, after the age 45 and coming out of nearly dying from the amoeba and everything else, I sat with that question because when we're in illness, this is not a bad thing necessarily. It's an opportunity to reflect. And so I said, what is that one thing? And it was really technology. And so when I graduated university in 92, I left home when I was 15 years old. I put myself through college. I did a science degree. At the end of university, I was coding and we were doing some of the early facial recognition algorithms. And I left all of that, went into the health space, went into professional sales, built 3 award-winning sales teams. And when I came out of that experience, the technology was that part of me that I was like, if this was all I've done some pretty kick butt things, but I haven't conquered this mountain. So I was in the process of designing my own technology, and I ended up bumping into someone who is just newly founded an AI company, and they brought me in to help them raise money, which if I have one area of genius, raising money is not a problem. So we start raising this money, and I become a co-founder, and we brought in $7.1 million in seed funding, and we didn't do it with any institutional investors. And, just started growing the company. I went from a vice president to a president to co-CEO, which I prefer being co-CEO as opposed to CEO. And my other CEO, he PhD engineer, really bright, and we complement each other. So where we're at with this company is we're providing business intelligence in the retail sector, but in the healthcare sector, we're actually doing COVID pre-screening and taking the burden off frontline workers. So Mayo Clinic, we're doing an installation in the VA right now. And how this is so interesting and fascinating, David, and I want everyone, especially the CEOs, to lean in and listen, and all of your audience. Last year, McKinsey came out with a report that said by the year 2030, 800 million jobs would be displaced globally by AI and machine learning. What COVID did is it accelerated that. A lot of companies who laid off people, those people aren't coming back because they will use machine learning. They will use AI. They will use robotics. And so the reason I bring this all up, you mentioned I'm a lifelong learner, because it's about adapting to our terrain. And I don't care if you're in your 30s, 40s, 20s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. Our mentor, Harvey McKay, he's still adapting. He's almost 90. We must continuously adapt. So this next iteration of my career will really be about taking artificial intelligence and using it for good. So at our company, we only do human-centric AI. We only do a project if it's going to help humans become better and not replace them.
I love it. How did you create your team? When you think about bringing this team together, I know you and the co-founder, you got this, you complement each other, you've got these key things, but now you're a growing company, you're significant valuation, might have a couple M&A opportunities for a couple companies you have, but how have you grown that team? How do you do with building this trusted team? How do you let people go when they need to? How do you create that culture and that team that you need and make sure it is high performing?
That's an amazing question. And especially in the startup space where you have a high level of churn. One of the things that I think our team has done really well is we've hired through referrals. Like attracts like, right? So two of our amazing application engineers, one came from a significant background in GoDaddy. They were friends of one of our initial investors. And they're just amazing humans. And our mutual friend, Christine Jones, knows this guy, and he's incredible. His name's Jeff. But that's what we did. We started. And the same thing with all of the business that we're bringing in now. It's come from our relationships, our connections. Harvey always says, Harvey McKay, good agreements prevent disagreements. And it's a philosophy we've used at the company. So when someone's coming in, we're very clear. We're a startup. We have an ESOP. We can't pay you what you're worth, but here's what we can do. And some weeks you're going to work 7 days a week, but we also are going to be flexible. We're going to have an open door policy. And I'll just share this story very quickly for all of the people who are overseeing people. So many, many years ago in Canada, there was a band called the Tragically Hip, and they were like the Rolling Stones of Canada. And early in my fitness career, I prepped them for tours. I was their nutritionist. I was their trainer. And when they had a conflict, they would lock themselves in a room until it was solved. And so one of the philosophies we've had, especially for our C team, is if there's been a conflict, we do not stop until it is resolved. And if someone has an issue with someone, they pick up the phone and they deal with it. And that philosophy for us has been so important in our governance. So that, and it's felt, you know this better than anyone because this is your area of genius. If the C team has conflict, the entire team has conflict.
Undeniably. So jumping one more level, have you had to let someone go ever that hasn't been a fit?
Yeah.
And so how do you either decide that and how do you deal with it? Because that's a challenge people have. It's like that, like me, I hate letting people go, but sometimes the most trusted thing you can do, or just the best thing you can do, the most compassionate thing you can do for them and the organization is to let them go. And yet it plagues many of us.
We let them go because it was a trust issue. They're a very capable engineer, super smart. And they left our company and they got a $400,000, next job, right? But it was a trust issue. And our CTO, he came from a company called Amino, which is the largest privately held healthcare database in the world. And this man has an amazing soul. And he came to us and he said, listen, this is what this person did to violate trust. And he's great in terms of his skill, but that's just not going to work. And so anyone we've let go of, and there hasn't been a lot, it's been a trust issue. And that's our number one KPI. If we can't trust you, you're out. We don't care how many PhDs you have.
Right. I love it.
That's it for this week's episode. Be sure to check out trustedleadershow.com for all the show notes and all the links to any of the information mentioned in today's episode. And if you haven't already, we would greatly appreciate a review on Apple Podcasts. This is a great way to help support the show and for other people to discover it. But in the meantime, that's it for this week's episode. Thank you so much for listening. And until next time, stay trusted.